So welcome. Just a little bit of history from my own self. When I left the job of being the representative for campus ministry at the United States Catholic Conference in 1985, I returned to the diocese and was pastor of a fairly large parish and diocesan director of campus ministry. I would say that one of the really the best administrative decisions I ever made in my whole career was hiring Joe Kiesel-Nield, because he has really done a tremendous job in Ellensburg, and I want to say publicly, Joe, how grateful I am for your continued work and keeping the banner of campus ministry going in the diocese as well as in the region and being active nationally. So I'm really pleased about that. In 1990, I went back to Washington and got a master's degree in pastoral counseling at Loyola. Subsequently, got a certificate in psychotherapy from the Adler Institute in Bowie State University, and spent the last 2 years doing in an internship in psychodrama at St. Elizabeth's Hospital, working with criminally insane and maximum security and chronic schizophrenics. It was wonderful, very rewarding, interesting, challenging kind of work, and a very intense medium of therapy. And currently I'm now in a doctoral program in clinical psychology at the Union Institute, which I'm working in Washington, but the main campus is in Cincinnati. So I've determined that Dan Zach is really my campus minister. So I'm a consumer now. I'm a campus ministry consumer as a student. Are you familiar with Union? Great. So that's just a little bit of background of what I'm doing. Today we're going to be talking about the pastoral, and I think the whole day is going to be given over to it. It was my challenge to carve out a niche to talk with you about this document, which was not theological directly, at least, because we have Jim Basic, and Jim Basic is the theologian and really the thinker very much behind a lot of it and putting it together and so forth. And so what am I going to do? How am I going to approach it if I don't approach it from a kind of a substantive point of view? Well, what I would like to share with you this morning and want to do is kind of a look at it from a systems point of view, a historical timeline, and share with you some of the anecdotal material, some of how this came to be. And for the presentation, this is kind of what I'm planning. We're doing a little introduction. I'm going to do a preview of the morning. I'm going to, being that I am in psychodrama and must maintain my identity as a action-oriented therapist, I'm going to get you on your feet. At some point, we're going to do a couple of spectrograms, which will stir things up a little bit, I'm sure, and just to kind of warm us up a little bit. And then I'm going to go through the history of the document. And in the midst of it, so it doesn't become too boring, I'm going to do a systems reflection on campus ministry, and I have a handout for you there. I'm going to do a little consultation, and finally, I'm going to look at the future of how to promote this document within the context of your campus, your diocese, or the context in which you work. And then, in the conclusion, I want to just share a couple of things that I learned from this whole process, just my own reflection on it, and finally, if there's any discussion. And that's what I would propose for the time that we'll be together today. Being as that this is our first presentation, and I'm sure that many of you know one another, but I know that many of you are new to me. It might be interesting to find out just how long people have been in campus ministry, and just to kind of figure out where we are in terms of the history of our campus ministry. And so what I'm going to ask us to do is I'm just going to ask us to think of I just began campus ministry right here. Okay, I just started, was recently appointed, and walking around here, if you could sort yourselves according to who was older and younger in campus ministry, until we get around to this end over here, and this person here is going to be the person who is in campus ministry the longest. Huh? Right. We have a couple of wheelchairs. We don't know there's some dinosaurs in here. And so just for fun, just stand up and sort yourselves out according to that timeline. We have some discussions among the wheelchair committee. This is pretty interesting. This is fascinating. Where? Just say the year that you.
I started in '62.
Just the year. Just kind of go around. Just.
70, 71, 72,
78,
81,
81, 81,
82,
82,
82, 85, 85, 85, 88, 89,
89,
79,
88, 89, 91, 92.
94, 76.
Okay, tomorrow. Okay, good. Well, this shows. I would say that the pastoral letter was really written right in. This is 88, 84. So this is the era. You came in the writing of the pastoral letter, right there. You were before the pastoral letter, and you're after the pastoral letter. So that kind of gives you an idea of where people are. Okay, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to just have us quickly rearrange ourselves into diocesan director. Who is longest as diocesan director? So let's kind of think of, there may be some arrangement. We have, okay. Okay. Okay, then just for curiosity, we'll see our okay. Let's
71, 78, 80, 81,
85,
85, 88, 88,
89,
89, 90,
89,
90,
91,
94,
September.
Okay. Okay. June. July. Okay. Great. Now this is another way of slicing the pie here, and you find out information here that we have a lot of very new the diocesan people have been in campus ministry a long time, but the diocesan directorships are more new, which is probably a healthy and was something you would expect to be. What I'd like to do is, just to go around, and let's go around from the youngest to the most senior directors, and just say, and Joe, I'm going to have you write these down if you wouldn't mind. Just your greatest challenge as a diocesan director. What do you experience? And now you may have something that's similar to somebody else, but what is as you reflect on your ministry of being a diocesan director, what is your greatest challenge?
I think it's doing a lot with very little in terms of resources.
Okay.
That's what I'm.
Good. That's good, and that's exactly the kind of answer we want. Kind of nice and short and clear. Okay.
basically just getting acclimated to, I'm at my alma mater, and over 10 years it's changed considerably.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting acclimated to a change
Mm-hmm.
in campus reality.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Being the only full-time campus minister in the diocese.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's a real challenge, sure.
gathering other campus ministers and offering resources to them.
Okay.
Maintaining our level of funding that we have.
Okay, funding is a big issue for you. Okay.
I'd say ownership of campus ministry, especially by the presbytery, as a diocesan-wide.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Owning of the
Ownership of campus ministry as a diocesan-wide and not as property.
You're going to have to probably do more. That's okay. We'll tear them off. Okay.
Owning, I'm not sure how to write that.
Yeah, well, ownership of the ministry by the diocese. Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, okay.
I guess from the role, what is that supposed to be doing?
Okay. To know what you're supposed to be doing? Right, and that's, okay, okay.
I didn't get it.
To know what he's doing, basically, and to do it.
What's the direction?
Direction, yeah.
Developing communities on campuses.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Good, good.
You have to keep it interactive.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
How to be a director of campus ministry.
Okay.
Maybe the director, but I don't direct.
Right, how to do it. Yeah, just what it means. That's similar to the one that you had there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Working with a bishop who rejects the documents that we're here to study.
That's great. You know.
How about just working with bishops?
Okay.
Credibility within the university as institution, with the system itself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Credibility within the university. Okay.
Developing new formations, campus ministry, new paradigms.
Yeah, new paradigms. My. Okay. Mm-hmm.
No time. Good funding, good support, lots of other stuff, but no time.
No time.
And we,
Like the first one.
Like the first one?
Right, resources.
Resources. Okay. Okay.
But not financial resources.
okay, so, but also time.
Okay.
You missed the paradigm.
I did, yes.
Paradigm development of new paradigms.
Yeah, new paradigms, right. If you see one that yours relates to, could you let Joe know so we can kind of put these together? But, okay? Yes.
Joe, I'm very much on the problem with bishops, working with bishops, and the question of clerical indifference. If you're not at a campus ministry that has a strong parish base,
Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Okay?
Rotating visitations of our campus ministers, the colleges, universities, whatever.
Okay, so getting around, making contact with.
More than contact, actually almost an evaluation.
Okay, that would be a new category.
Managing campus ministry, or
Is that the time thing there? Yeah, every year we do two. More of a supervision.
supervision.
But more of dialogue and letting them know we're there to help them.
Okay. Okay.
They don't like the word evaluations, they get a little nervous about that.
Yeah.
They even call them their visitation.
Okay.
Trying to expand campus ministries, especially at places where it's primarily a commuter situation.
Okay, so commuter campuses.
Right. It's got 5 or 6 that we need to do something with. And the resources aren't going to increase. It's how do we do some ministry there with the same resources we got?
More bricks with less scroll.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Balancing ever-growing responsibilities with ever-diminishing energy.
And is that,
You age?
Now I have to have more crap on my shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Balancing responsibilities fits here, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay?
Okay, I think in our diocese, campus ministry is really not part of the diocesan pastoral vision. It's there, they like to do more, fine, but it's not really part of their vision.
Okay, that might also go with bishops, working with bishops or administration, but that's fine.
Okay, thanks.
Sarah?
I want to go back to the first one,
Okay.
and I would like to add a dimension.
Okay. From here.
Doing a lot with little resources, I would also say personnel.
Personnel.
We have only single people because we can't afford to have more people, more personnel on campuses, or campuses that have no personnel,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Rodney Dangerfield. No respect. Campus ministry as part of the continuum of Catholic education in the total education and journey of Catholic principles.
Maybe here. Total education says campus ministry not part of diocesan vision. Could that fit there in terms of not being a part of the educational
I
process?
think it's also a national level. I think it's
okay.
part of the continuum. It's one segment that continuation of the process of the education of Catholics.
Oh, I see. Okay, so maybe that's
Across
different.
the board.
Different category.
Mm-hmm. Fine, that's fine, sure.
The promoting and an advocate of campus ministry in the diocese, and also some of the other things is about community colleges, where a lot of community colleges.
Right, that's,
And the other one is the religious literacy.
mm-hmm,
No,
okay.
I didn't get it.
Okay. Yeah, that would fit with the Catholic education there. I mean, continuing education.
Thank you.
Okay, and there were a couple of other things that other people have said too. Okay. Yes, Rick.
I think the expansion of campus ministry onto commuter and residential campuses. And also a question of religious literacy.
Hello. Religious literacy. Commuter campuses and residential.
Yes.
I think if they asked the campus ministers in our diocese, they would probably say religious literacy was their biggest challenge. From a management perspective, I think I would be with Sarah on the personnel. The kind of frozen, our budgets kind of frozen to salaries for the last 5 years.
Okay. Okay, good. Could please have a seat. And, thank you for that. I think the purpose of doing this is the pastoral letter gives us a language. And I think its strength is that it provides a grammar of looking at the various challenges that campus ministers, and specifically yourselves as diocesan directors, are facing. And part of my hope today is that we're going to be able to see how those particular challenges that you bring up can be addressed within the context of the pastoral letter. And to begin to do this, we're going to, I would go through a timeline of the pastoral letter. And if you could just pass these out to people. I'm going to ask you not to look beyond the first page, because the second part I'm going to use later. Okay? And for this timeline, we're just going to walk through I have this up here. It's kind of hard to see, but it will help me kind of put this in a perspective. And we're going to walk through the writing of the pastoral letter. And I will give you some reflections on this and some of my own insights and how it happened, and maybe this will give you some understanding of it in a way that you might not have otherwise. The pastoral letter began in November 13th, 1980, when this document, Higher Education and the Pastoral Mission of the Church, was published. Now, this document was developed by the Committee of Bishops and College Presidents, with Tom Gallagher as its chair, the head of the Department of Education. It was written in a closet. I shouldn't say that. Okay. Part of began in spring of 1981, coming from Joe Kiesel Neal's job in Ellensburg, Washington, in the middle of the desert. The first thing I did was read this document, and I read it. The last paragraph was, since this message has addressed exclusively Catholic higher education, we were unable to speak of the excellent intellectual and pastoral leadership of many Catholics engaged as teachers, administrators, and campus ministers in colleges and universities which are not Catholic. We hope for a future opportunity to speak of their invaluable contribution to the intellectual life of our country. Woo! So I said, that's pretty interesting. So filed that back in my mind. In the spring of this year, I dusted myself off and went to Santa Barbara for a CCMA study week, which was a wonderful time, and I had a great time in introducing myself. I'm the new diocesan representative and so forth. And I got a phone call from Bishop Kelly. Bishop Kelly said, the National Advisory Committee is meeting next weekend at Marysville. Be there at 9:15 in the morning and answer some questions with regard to campus ministry, because they have some questions. And this person by the name of Dorothy Herbert, who was a member of the National Advisory Council, which is the parish council for the bishops, had wanted to know some questions about campus ministry. What are we doing for our young people on the campuses? And she had so they got me to answer these questions. Well, I came typically, as Cos would know, with charts and with things and found things flying down from the ceiling. Wonderful. And I said, what we really need is a pastoral letter on campus ministry, and the bishops have stated that they want to do that. Well, the National Advisory Committee said, yeah, that's a good idea. We're going to pass a resolution that a pastoral letter on campus ministry be written. Now, I've got to tell you that the last thing anybody at USCC wanted to hear was that. That was not a welcome, because it's another job and they don't understand it and they don't care about it, but it was something that it's like a pinball in a pinball machine. The ball gets going in the machine and it has to go somewhere. It bounces from one committee to the other. So it went from the administrative committee to the doctrine committee to the committee on education to this committee and that committee, everyone not wanting to sink the idea but not wanting to act on it. This happened for a year and a half. And it's happened in silence. It happened without anybody really knowing much about it. But it was alive. The idea was alive. Now, I think this is very important, because what happened was it got in the system. And whether a person liked it or didn't like it, and many people were very cool on the idea, the fact was that systemically it was alive. That naively, even though I didn't understand systems analysis, that if you understand a system, you can work within it in ways that are very powerful and very effective. And so I think the first thing that I would like to say is the importance of working systemically within institutions. And when you work with process and with system, that you can do an awful lot. Now, I'm going to make a little brief hiatus here. And I have something that I want to move in another direction. I'm going to come back to this point. And this is for you, and this is the handout that I'm giving you today. I want to give you something practical to take home with you, which is a way of looking at campus ministry systems. It's something like one of the things we did at St. Elizabeth's Hospital is before I ever went onto a unit, I had to do a systems analysis of the unit. And what this is a reformulation of that systems analysis for campus ministry. It's something that you can be creative with, and I want to walk through it with you because I really believe in the power of systems. Okay? So this is something, so the three stages I'm doing, this is a little separate thing here, but the three stages is, first of all, background information, emergent information, and then reconciliation. And what you do when you look at background information is that there's no interpretation. These are just the facts. You have a campus ministry center in which you want to do a systems analysis of. You first of all find out what the actual structures are that make up that system, the philosophy, the relationships to the local parish, the university, ecumenical, description of faculty and surrounding community. You do key staff information. What are the job descriptions? You know, what do people do and what do they say they do? What is the history of the program? What are the traditions? What ghosts are in the halls? What are people proud of? And what are the skeletons in the closet? Who are the persons that are served in the ministry? The special attention to faculty, administration, parents, and the people you don't generally think of. And then program information. What do they say they're doing in terms of the various aspects of forming the faith community, appropriation of the faith, the various contexts of the campus ministry pastoral. So that's a background information, and that's just the facts. That's no interpretation. Then you do an emergent information look at the system. What are the actual interactions of the staff? How do they get along? What are the lines of communication? What are the participant interactions? What is the sociometry of campus ministry? Who are stars? Who are outcasts? Who are emergent leaders? And who are those who are moving out of leadership positions? What are the staff and participant interactions? How do people feel about each other, the campus ministers, the students, the staff? What are the expectations given the particular history of campus ministry in the local context? What are actually happening with regard to the various aspects of campus ministry? And what are the emergent ministry issues? What's on the horizon? What's coming down the trail? What is to be avoided? What are the action demands that the community makes on campus ministry? What business is campus ministry really in? What are you really doing in the ministry? What's really happening there? And finally, very important, what are the secret dreams of the campus ministers? It's important to know the dreams of people. You have to talk to them and get into where their dreams are and their hopes and their ideas about what ministry means. Okay? Then you do a reconciliation. You look between what is being stated and what you view as actually happening, seeing what the similarities are. You look at the discrepancy, and then you look at your role within that system. What can you do or be to affect that system given these realities? Okay? This is a very short, and be creative with this. Use the parts that are useful. It's not a set recipe. It's something to stimulate you to look at whether it is your campus ministry or whether it is your diocese. This could be formulated to look at your diocese, to understand the system that you're dealing with in terms of the structures of the diocese. And as before you go into a situation, if you do this kind of analysis, you're not clueless. You know what the situation is. You're not going in blindly, and you're not going to be blindsided because you really know, you have a strong sense of your place and the potentials of what can happen within that context. One of the things I'm going to say for my learnings eventually is that there's no evil empire. There's no evil empire. No, there's no bad. There just is what is. And when you understand the system, then you can deal with it and not moralize about it and get all upset and tantrumy and deal with unresolved parental issues with regard to it, which isn't healthy and doesn't help. You know, you deal with things as the way they are. So that is what I think happened at this point. For some reason, as I say naively and probably stupidly, because I didn't know what else to do, I was let the system handle this which got started in the National Advisory Committee. So finally, it was put on the pastoral, that was put on the bishop's agenda. And I would go around to bishops at the bishops' meeting and say, gee, try and solve the idea. They'd say, go away. Don't want to hear it. Joe, you're a nice guy, but this is not going to happen, and la la. Like that. But it did, and it was actually put on the commission, the writing of the committee. Then we went into the process of committee selection. Now this is way down the line. And so I called up Jim Basic. I says, Jim Basic, my name is Joe Kenna, and your name has been given as somebody who would really be good to work as a writer on this thing. And Jim said to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, because he's in the room. He said, I don't want to do this.
Morning. Where's Joe? Oh, Joe. Yeah. Thank you. Got a chance to talk at lunch with Joe today. Fascinated by his story and retelling it. I mean, we wouldn't have that document without Joe. I mean, it was his life. He had a vision at the right time in history that it would be good for campus ministry to have this pastoral letter. It'd be good for the bishops to think about it. Be good to have all the consultations. Be good to have something in writing. And I think in retrospect he was right, and he fought for it like crazy. And, he put his lifeblood into it. The meeting, a lot of the story I didn't tell. The meeting in Orlando, the last one, Joel was, just about had it. I mean, he was about dead. I mean, he was walking around. I asked him, what really was he sick with? He was sick with the pastoral. I mean, it was his life. He was consumed by it. We had so many problems with it and rejections and last-minute things, and we had to just work like crazy. And Joel just was collapsed. Yet there he was in Orlando for 3 days trying to carry on and run the meetings. We never would have had it without him. Joe once told me when they bury him, he wants to have on top of him in the coffin the pastoral letter. And he was serious, and it's important to him. And it's important to Joe that it stands up, that they still use it at the Frank J. Lewis School to organize the thinking about campus ministry and so on. History is fascinating. I mean, if I was to tell the story, it'd probably sound a lot different than Joe about the whole pastoral. I mean, I remember personal touches. I remember we were having a meeting in Buffalo, I think it was, or someplace, and we were going by Niagara Falls. It was just a few minutes, and we were going to be late, and Joe said, you ever see Niagara Falls? I said, no, stops, takes me there, and so on. I remember in the early days when the whole thing where Joe was so supportive. I mean, we'd have these meetings, and everybody'd sit around and have these great ideas, and then jump in a plane and go home. I had to go home and write them all down, and Joe was always supportive and all that. I have a different view of the quest for wisdom than Joe does. I don't think it's that good a document, it's my hand. And the reason is there was a strange series of events when we wrote that. Right while we were writing it, 3 major documents came out from the world of higher education. By the Carnegie Institute, by Bennett, wrote one at that time. What was that called? The Legacy, something about it had legacy in it. 3 major documents came out while we were writing it. And we were sitting there with a finished document that appeared almost at the same time as those documents without any reference to them, without any interaction with those documents. And I think, therefore, there was many ways in which the Quest for Wisdom was a flawed document. But to me, when it came down to the rejection by the bishops at Collegeville, and by my own estimate, less than half of them actually read it. It was a groundswell, as Joe suggested, and it emanated from certain dioceses that to be against it. And most of the guys never read it. I figured that out by informal survey. And then at that point, as Joe knows, I had a great conscience problem, which I voiced publicly in saying that I thought it was a major mistake in the history of the church not to address the concerns of higher education. We had those 500 responses we had came from almost every state, from Harvard, Yale, presidents, Harvard, Yale, small community colleges, and without exception, they said they welcomed a word from the church about the situation of higher education. without exception, that they wanted a word, expect a word for the church. And my summary statement, when I expressed my own conscience problems, said, right when we with bishops are willing to speak out on peace and war and on the economy, and we got people looking for a word on higher education, the bishops are not ready to issue that. But my own sense is that it goes along with the fact that the document really is not that good. And I think I would still say that. My own reason for carrying on and continuing to write was part of the sense of obligation, as Joe suggested, but also the idea that we could take bits and pieces of the quest for wisdom and weave them into the empowered by the Spirit. And it's sort of been ever since my own life mission to make sure that empowered by the Spirit is not read as a ghettoized document. In other words, the great danger is always that campus ministry gets pushed to the margins, to the periphery, both in the church and by the university. The story I've been using lately, or the model metaphor, is John Mayer's book, Jesus, the Marginal Jew. Jesus, the Marginal Jew. And I think it often works out the campus minister, the marginal person. And what Jesus did, especially as we see it in Luke's gospel, was he insisted he go to the center, set his face to Jerusalem. And no matter what, he set his face to Jerusalem and proceeded to the center of power to confront and to bring the message, to spread the kingdom. And it provides at least some sort of analogy for what I always think of campus ministry being, that movement to the center of things, so that we cannot be dismissed as being peripheral. But my reason for continuing to write was that I thought we could salvage some of that essential thrust of the quest for wisdom, ministry to higher education, and bring it into empowered. And I think we did that in some ways. It's hidden, and the bishops who were opposed to it didn't see it, but I think it's in there, and I keep going around trying to emphasize that. Anyway, I just thoroughly enjoyed Joe's presentation, and many themes just resonated with me. The future, great importance of systems. Boy, we just have to see it. How does our system, the university system, work? This university in this place. What are the power structures? Who are the key players? How do they interact? That's one of the great reasons for arguing with our bishops to have campus ministers at longer time at our places. Because you can't get that system just overnight. It takes a long time to figure it out, to work one's way into it, to understand how things are maneuvered through committees, and who makes the final decisions about things. How do you get things done? All of that takes time, but it's important that we're thinking in those terms. And I can tell you, in dealing with a lot of campus ministers, that we have a lot of people who don't think in those terms. Unfortunately. I mean, we have a lot of ghettoized campus ministers. I mean, they're happy to have their retreat over here, and we all pat ourselves on the back and say a prayer together and believe we're saved and close to God and so on. And whatever's going on over there being the university, its structure and all of that, the whole campus life is unconnected. That's very bad, and one of my great reasons for talking to a group like this would be to encourage everyone to summon up the energy and strength to keep marching us to the center, marching us from the margins to the center, as Jesus set his face to Jerusalem. Jesus, the marginal Jew, can become the model for us moving to the center. I have redone my talk since what you're looking at. I wrote it on the plane coming, and that's why Dan Zach will be extremely disappointed, because you always have notes from me. We don't have them today. Those talks are all discarded there about the one facing the future and so on. That's my topic, but I've organized it in a different way. It's not typed out yet. I was up at 3:30 this morning working on it. And redoing it because I wasn't pleased with it. Anyway, those handouts you do have, the topic later on today is on spirituality, and I will allude to some of that then, and other things there that I thought could be of value to you, especially in terms of a comprehensive approach to campus ministry based on the 6 aspects of ministry that we have in the pastoral and have still held. It's a great joy to Joe Kenna that those still structure what we're about. And as I thought he did an excellent job in answering the questions and saying, well, it isn't because it's in a book, it's because what we do. We form community, you know? And somebody walks up to a bishop and says, hey, we said we were going to educate for justice. What better way can you educate for justice than to have these people involved in a justice issue? Oh, so the categories hold. Joe came to Toledo one time. We're walking along the Maumee River, and Joe says, well, we don't need that educating for justice in there. What did I say, Joe? No, it's pretty strong. Don't say it. Don't say it. Yeah.
It's not that I didn't want it. It's just that I thought politically it
might not fly, right. And I said, Joe, I don't care if it flies or not. You have to have it. But anyway, the categories hold because they're real. Because that's what we do. That's what, as near as I can figure, we form community. We try to develop the Christian conscience. We're trying to get leaders. We're trying to help people develop. That's what we're about. And it's a way of organizing our thinking. The thing that's on my mind a lot today, and it surfaced here with this, is the word tensions. One of my last books was called Tensions in the Church. The word tension captures a whole lot of what life is about these days. You might even have tensions in this group. Might have tensions between this group and the CCMA. How do I know? No. What do I know? I come in as an outsider. But there's tensions all over the place. And so what I've done is organize my thinking around 9 tensions. Reminds me when Avery Dulles got up at the last CTSA meeting and he's talking about Catholic theology. He got up and he says, well, there's 15 characteristics of Catholic theology. And everyone sort of groaned, oh, no, 15. I told Avery I was giving a talk, I had 10. At least I cut it down a bit. So I got it down to 9 today. I'm not sure I'm going to cover 9, and frankly, I don't care. Because the main problem is, how do I keep people awake? That is the main problem. And frankly, I haven't figured that out yet. How about my last speaking assignment, Dan? Oh, but that wasn't my last one, but not long ago. I'm sitting in a room, great, much bigger than this. It's 30 degrees outside, and it's about 35 inside. I've got 100 students in front of me. They got hats on, coats, and everything. It's incredible. And there's a fireplace at each end of the room that is doing absolutely no good at all. And these students are sitting on hard benches with no backs. And I got 3 hours with them. Hey, man, anything looks good since then, you know. You know the most remarkable thing about that? After I did a little break after each of them, I had 6 different segments to my talk. And after each one, I gave a discussion first. And they'd have their discussion, they'd run to the fireplaces, you know. So this time, after the third one, I was talking about intellectual growth, right? And I said, well, it'd be an interesting exercise to say, how would you tell somebody else what you believe as a Christian? And at first they had to write what they mean for 2 minutes. Then they had to do it. Well, it was unbelievable. I sat back, Dan could tell you this, and after 8 minutes, everybody but 2 people were still sitting there talking. They didn't run to they were freezing that, didn't run to the fireplaces. Very interesting. I couldn't fathom. In fact, I asked a number of the students, you know, what? They said, oh, we were in serious conversation. That's an important issue. How would you tell somebody what you believe as a Christian? Well, this keeping people awake ought to be easy after that. We just turn on the air conditioning or something. I got 9 of these tensions. I'll work my way through them. The first has to do with how we respond to modernity, to the modern world. Modern world is obviously the world we know, created by Gutenberg and Columbus and Luther and Bacon and Locke and Thomas Jefferson, all the shapers of the modern mentality. And the question is, with that modern world, I mean, how do you respond to it? What do you do with it? One great option, and it's a worldwide option, is fundamentalism. Martin Marty got $3 million, you know, to study fundamentalism. They produced 6 volumes. First one is called Fundamentalisms Observed. as soon as we had Marty talk at our place, and as soon as I heard him, the first paragraph out of his mouth, I said, he's right. He was sitting on a plane after he got to 3 million saying, how do I organize this? And what Marty saw is, we have been too narrow in thinking of fundamentalism. We think of it as an American phenomenon, turn of the century, Princeton University, Scopes trial, all of that, James Barr, fundamentalism, all that. And he said, it's too narrow. What's the fact is that throughout the whole world, we have fundamentalism contending for the human soul. We all know we got Islamic fundamentalism, right? Now we're well aware that we got Jewish fundamentalism with Rabin, right? We got Buddhist fundamentalism. We got communist fundamentalism, Marxist fundamentalism, trying to deal with Yeltsin, Russia. It's all over the place. We had Catholic fundamentalism, not just Protestant fundamentalism. So, and what Marty did was identify the dynamics of fundamentalism. And what it is, it's a reaction to modernity. It's an inability to deal with the modern world. And it says the whole modern project is wrong. That's why in the United States, you notice it's centered on two distinctively modern things. Evolution, they're still into that. Creationism in the school. And it's centered, secondly, on modern biblical criticism. The two touchstones of modernity. They just can't deal with it. And why? It's not just they don't like it intellectually, they see it as an attack on their being. Their very identity's at stake. And what do you do when your identity's at stake? You circle the wagons. You get together with one another. You go back to the fundamental documents and try to find weaponry to fight against this modern evil. So modernity, that's the common thing, and it happens whether you're a Marxist or a Buddhist or a Jew, whatever. You must fight against everything modernity stands for, democracy and human rights and pluralism and tolerance and all of those kind of things. So that's the first contending element in all this, is a fundamental worldwide phenomenon. Nigeria, you see it at work again with the military regime there now. And of course, the other option in dealing with modernity is what we call an uncritical acceptance of it. If science can do it, let's do it. Just expand the military-industrial complex, build more weapons, do whatever, but just go with it, modernity, whether in an uncritical way. And we got a whole lot of that in our culture as well. And we got some of it, I think, coming out of Catholic circles. I mean, you read some of the Catholic things about the capitalistic system and the free market. I mean, I talked to one of those people that, I mean, he thinks the free market is divine inspiration. That's Michael Novak. I mean, Michael thinks the free market is really divinely inspired. So we get a sort of uncritical acceptance of elements of modernity. And the third option, and of course one that I want to say that we ought to look at and be a part of, would be a dialectical approach to modernity, where we'd be able to say something like, we affirm democracy, the struggle for human rights, and so on, tolerance, pluralism, and all of that, where we say no to all the other terrible things about modernity, like individualism, rampant individualism, to the hedonism that it produces, to the rationalism. Geez, I was with a graduate student the other day, and I must say, he's given me his whole line. It almost sounds like the Humanist Manifesto regurgitated. And I said to him, I said, you sound, I mean, I wasn't very nice in the conversation. I have to go back and apologize, I suppose, and start over. But I mean, it's just somehow, I said, you sound like he was a graduate student and older. I said, you sound like an undergraduate who just read Nietzsche, Sartre, and Camus, and you're off on a kick, Like suddenly, religion's wrong. It's Voltaire smashed the infamous thing, Sounds like, I said, it's warmed over 19th century thought. And every discipline I know, every discipline, physics, sociology, psychology, you've got an understanding of the mystery dimension of life. Almost everybody understands that, rationalistic approaches to human problems don't work. Psychology, sociology, political science, I don't care what it is. You got physicists writing some of the best theology today around. out of the awesome character of the universe, out of chaos theory, so on. Well, anyway, the rationalism, we got to say no to that kind of thing. No to the pollution given to us by industrialization. No to still the nuclear problem. We talk about getting rid of nuclear weapons. We still got enough to blow us up, and maybe the threat's worse than before if you factor in the terrorist thing. So I'm saying a dialectical approach to modernity. Well, what does all that mean for us? That's like a macro analysis. Who's fighting for the soul of the human family? That's what's at stake here. Are the Jewish fundamentalists going to run the situation in the Middle East, or is the spirit of Rabin going to do that? Well, I heard some of the talks Rabin, been playing them back on NPR and so on. They're masterful. They're wonderful, amazing. In terms of this man, reaching out, and when he poured out his soul about what it meant to shake hands with Arafat. Some of you heard that? Gee, but he Christmas, a man, a murderer, a man who was behind terrorism. Am I going to reach out and shake hands? This was not an easy gesture. That represents to me, a response, constructive response to modernity, and not the Jewish fundamentalists who go back to some scriptural basis to say they ought to be killing people. And there were justifications. That's typical of the fundamentalist thing. Go back to the scriptures, the holy documents, the writings of Marx or whatever, and find justification for cutting people's hands off. The Quran or something. Anyway, so what's all that mean for us? Well, it seems to me all of us got our fights on campus with our own little brand of fundamentalism, which is usually a Christian, Protestant, evangelical fundamentalism, but which is also the Catholic fundamentalism. And I think we have to recognize that. There is a Catholic fundamentalism that is not true to our heritage. It wants to be defensive, circle the wagons, take people on, kick people out, and give litmus tests and so on, and we can't abide that, seems to me. Have to fight against that and come up with a more, as I'm saying, dialectical approach. So this is real to us. This isn't just Rabin and Islamic fundamentalism. This is us on our campuses. I think it's important for us to model a dialectical approach in our interactions with people. I go back to the bishop's pastoral letters on the economy and peace as models of this. They're able to say what's good about the economy and what isn't out of Christian principles. Our bishops gave us a marvelous example. We ought to hold them to that. That's what was so terrible when Newhouse came out with that article in Centesimus Annus came out in the Wall Street Journal. Some of you remember that. And Newhouse says at that time, well, you see what the Pope said now. He has undercut the basis for the bishop's economics pastoral. That's one of us talking. I think that it's important that there's voices that fight for the very process and the general methodology found in those great pastoral letters. It is fundamentally dialectical. It's not a blanket affirmation of the capitalistic system by any means. That's my first one. Let's see if we have any interaction to that tension that we have to deal with. Comments, questions, fill-ins. Let's do one-to-one for a minute. How about finding a partner? Just force yourself to respond. Think about it. What'd you get out of it? Stay awake. You can stand up. Albert, you can stand up during this. Let me see if we have comments or questions anybody wants to make or say, ask, do. Yeah.
I just think that this whole narrow-mindedness, the lack of a dialectical approach, but it comes out of so much fear in the modern world, complexity,
right?
And they just rush to it because it's a panacea, it's an easy solution,
right?
And our young people are very prone to that.
Yes, right. It's important to understand it both sociologically, I think, and psychologically. You emphasize the psychological part. I think it's important. I'd suggest if you look at it, you might probably see two kinds of things. One is in the fear element. The fear, the modern world is complex, it's confusing. In fact, now we're moving from modernity to post-modernity. It becomes even harder. We can expect it to be more difficult. And the other thing is having one's identity threatened. That's where the passion comes from. That's where the aggressive side comes from. It's not just a fearful thing, okay, let's gather and support one another. A lot of us do that. But that isn't what they do, is it? It becomes much more aggressive. You have to kill Rabin. You have to cut people's hands off. You got to go after people. You got to attack. It's like Jerry Falwell, who once said the most dangerous person in the United States was Billy Graham. It said that's exactly, you got to understand that mentality. Why did Jerry Falwell say that Billy Graham's the most dangerous person in the United States? Because he's like us, but he can't be trusted because he plays ball with the modern world in certain ways that we don't like. Therefore, he's the most dangerous person. It's the same reason the Wanderer goes after Raymond Brown. The dynamics are the same. Our identity is at stake. There's where the passion and the aggressiveness comes. We must defend ourselves because we will lose. They will come and submerge us. They'll take us over. Well, a lot of this malicious stuff has got the same character. You have to fight back. And we're seeing more aggressive Catholic fundamentalists like that now. You see it in the Wanderer, or people want to attack the Eucharistic prayer you use on campus, or whatever it is. Yeah.
I was just thinking that I think a dialectical approach, which you said we ought to model in campus ministry, is good. But I wonder, modeling the dialectical approach is different when you place the poles at different places.
Sure it is, yeah.
For example, you were mentioning Richard John Newhouse in his response to
Centesimus Annus.
Right, the encyclical. But I wonder, quickly, one of the things that popped in my mind was, I'm not sure that Newhouse would say that he wasn't being dialectical.
Sure.
That he would put the poles at different places than they did arrive.
Exactly right.
And that, to me, that's a problem with the dialectical.
Well, I don't know if it's a problem with the dialectical approach. What it calls for is a more nuanced analysis. It's one of the other tensions I want to take up. If you'd let me take it up in sequence and respond to you in sequence. But it is, you're absolutely right. And it's why it's important to get correct what the fights are, what the tensions are. And a lot of times it depends on the issue, doesn't it? It depends on what question we are examining. Now here I'm trying to look at sort of a global sense of things. What's the global fight that's going on? There's other fights with the U.S. culture that's going on. There are other fights going on within the church. So each of the fights, in a sense, has different poles and has different players, different options. And as I put in my book, Tensions in the Church, the important thing today to live effectively and without getting drained and pulled down and despondent is to make the tensions intelligible as a first step to making them fruitful. They got to be intelligible. We got to get it right. We got to use our head. As Jacques Maritain says, not enough to have a tender heart. You got to have a tough mind. That's why a lot of us are gathered back there under that sign, religious literacy. You have to. There is a tough-mindedness that's needed to work our way through this world. So, you got to get it right. And I'm not saying I got it right, but I will bring it up in another context. We'll see if it rings true or not. Let me take up my second tension here. And as you can see, I'm starting at the largest levels and going to work our way down to the last tension of males and females interacting here and now, but starting at a global level and working my way down. So the next tension is what I'm calling globalism versus the new tribalism. People recognize the new tribalism word from Václav Havel. So let me play this out. What's going on in our world, in other words, at a big level, is that we got a global vision like we never had before. Billions of people watch the Olympic Games at one time. Simultaneously around the world we find out about Rabin's assassination and have to deal with it. We have this we have the internet. We're connected in all over the world. We'll do research. Joe Kenner can do research at his home and get material from down in Cincinnati, Ohio without ever going to Cincinnati. So we're going to access libraries all over the world. So it's an unheard of globalism. It's like Marshall McLuhan was a piker compared to what really is happening. We got a global village that's connected, interconnected. So it's incredible. We haven't probably assimilated that yet. But, and this is the fascinating thing, right as the vision expands what's happening, we have this new tribalism. See it all over. Canada, Quebec, separatism. Czechoslovakia. You know, you're thinking there's a nice little country, very tiny country. But the Slovaks want to break off. They got their own country now. You know, just look at Bosnia. All over the world you get new tribalisms, new interests in ethnicity. Take our own culture. What do we end up? You know, we don't have this, melting pot. The melting pot idea is passé. What we got is all these little interest groups. We can't get legislation passed because the insurance companies are against the medical thing they want to change. There's always some group that doesn't like something. And all these groups, they function, and it seems like their whole reason for being, the whole thrust and motivation and dynamism is preserve our group. Keep our group identity. And it comes down even to at a smaller level here, because it's now the divorced people want to be with other divorced people. And all the alcoholics are together, that's where they find their inspiration. No? People are involved in Overeaters Anonymous, they're over here. Nobody else understands the eating problem like the